Marvel Rivals has been out for a few days now, and I've been playing this game a lot. And in this short time, I've managed to climb to Diamond 3, which is around top 500-ish. And I wanted to make a guide showing some quick tips that actually really matter in solo queue that will help you in your climb. And the reason why I think my input has some value is because I'm not a hero shooter guy. I'm not an ex-Overwatch top 500 or a pro player or a big streamer or an FPS game main. I just play FPS games casually, and this is what I found works to win games against players who are obviously much better than me. Alright, so some people will already click off after this point, but number one is that you can't one trick. If you only play one character in this game, it's gonna be really rough, because when you get to Diamond, your character can get banned. But more importantly, that's not even a big deal. More importantly, if you only play one character, you're gonna have some really wonky team comps sometimes. And this game is very team comp dependent right now in the early meta. So if you are stuck playing one character, you're gonna have some really bad games, really unwinnable games. For example, at the beginning of my climb, I was only playing Hela, which is probably the strongest character in the game, but the problem is that even though she's so strong, if you get too many DPS players in one comp, you kind of are just gonna get rolled over, unless your DPS players are just absolute gods, which they usually won't be. So it's better to just learn at least 2 roles. Optimally, you would know 3, but you should at least know 2 roles. And in those roles, you should be very comfortable on at least 2 heroes in those roles at the minimum. Alright, so additionally to what I just said, another really important thing is to specialize in the heroes that you choose. So you can't be swapping around all the time, it's really bad. You have to choose 2 or 3, maybe 4 heroes per role, and you really get invested in them. Because even though this game is very team comp dependent, so the more heroes you have under your arsenal, the better. You can't put so much time in every single hero. You have to choose. There's only so much time you have. So find the heroes that you like. When you first start the game, find the heroes that you like and then invest in them. Alright, the third tip, and this is pretty simple, I'm an introvert too, but you have to use your mic because it makes a huge difference in this game, especially for coordinating ults. And you should at least learn what ults are actually good to coordinate. For me, I play Mantis all the time, so for Mantis, her ult should be used before or after Luna's ult, and you don't want to use them together most of the time. And Mantis ult is really good for pushing. You want to pop Mantis ult and then just push and run them over. I always communicate that in the mic. I just ask my teammates, hey, group on me, we're going to push with Mantis ult. I use ult, we get a huge movement speed boost, and just run over the enemy team. It's so important. If you don't coordinate your ults, you're going to lose against players who do pretty much every single time, unless again you have a name god in your team. But the problem is that as you climb up the ranks, there will be a lot of aim gods, as you will notice. So the DPS's players, and as far as mechanical skill goes, they will be evenly matched most of the time, and the difference will come in the coordination. So you really need to talk. Alright, next up, you need to take your time to aim. This is mostly aimed at the support players. Like when you're a support player, you probably are very used to the situation where you are shooting their tank, you're just shooting your abilities, you want to do as much damage as possible, so you're just shooting away. But then some Psylocke comes behind you or something, and you're still in the mindset, oh, I have to kill this guy as fast as possible. He's gonna kill me. Let me just shoot my projectiles in his direction and hopefully it will work. You have to actually take your time to aim. Take your time to line up the shot. Even if you're losing some DPS, technically, you are actually gaining DPS. Because if you hit a headshot, it's worth way more than if you're just hitting body shots or not hitting at all. Alright, next up, this is pretty big deal. So you need to respect Hawkeye. This character is extremely toxic and I would say overpowered. He has currently the only real one-shot in the game outside of ults, and The way you deal with him, you really need to respect this character or he will just take over the game a lot of the time if he has good aim. So you need to break line of sight. Remember, you need to break line of sight. He has his charge up that will one-shot you, but he loses it once. He loses line of sight. So if he has no charge, he won't kill you with a headshot without a charge. He only gets a one-shot if he charges up. So you need to break line of sight, as you have to always be looking for this guy and don't look in his direction for too long. If you don't respect him, he will take over the game. Alright, next up we have Moon Knight. This character, the same thing as Hawkeye but way weaker. You need to respect him. What he usually does, outside of putting his anks in weird places, he will just look to put them usually behind you. So you really need to be looking for his angst and try to visualize in your mind where he would want to put them. It's usually around behind you. He will stay in high ground and put the angst behind you and your team, and you have to always be scanning for those. Alright, last example, we have Doctor Strange. This guy is, in my opinion, extremely overpowered as well. The way he works is that he has a huge stun and a lot of damage, and he can almost wipe your team on his own. So you really have to be watching for his ult. You have to really respect his ult, think about his ult. He's gonna usually want to ult after flying, so you have to always be watching out for him flying in the air. Alright, next up. Heroes are not made equal. Now, I don't advocate for Metaslaving, and it's also too early to know which heroes are the absolute best yet. But I will say that some heroes will be way harder to make work than others, and if you really like them, you have to be ready to accept that. Some heroes are way easier to climb with. That's just how the game works, and you need to accept that and be ready for that. And if you don't want to accept that, you need to play the good heroes yourself, which is what I do. Alright, next up, you have to learn one strong pattern each character does. So you don't have to go and watch a guide for every single character out there, but you need to learn what is a really strong thing that they do. So for example, what does Psylocke like to do? She likes coming from the air because she's harder to see and hit when she's ulting. Another example, what does Magic like to do after using her portal? She usually wants to go for her combo, so you can see it coming as soon as you see her use portal. It's not always gonna be that way, but you can be ready for it. Next up, you should find a duo that has a team up synergy buff. The best team up synergy in the game is Hela and Thor, and that's why me and my friend were, for most of our climb at the beginning, were playing Hela and Thor. I was playing Hela and he was Thor. This team up synergy is extremely strong, and even though the game is completely playable without team up synergies, they do matter, and if you can find a duo that always plays a character that goes well with yours, that will increase your chances of winning. Example of good team up synergies is, as I said, Hela and Thor, but there's also Mantis and Adam Warlock. These two are very strong together. Groot and Jeff. Groot and Jeff are very strong together as well. They have a good synergy. Those are just examples. Magic and Psylocke, if you want to both play DPS, even though that will be a bit rough, but I mean, you can. Magic and Psylocke are also very good together. Okay, next up, you need to understand when it is good to chase and run the enemy team over and when you should pull back. It's too complicated to get into exactly when you should, and there's no rule, but a tip I can say is you probably should look to chase when there is very little time left on the clock. So the enemies dying could mean that they won't reach the capture point or the cart in time, so their deaths matter so much in that moment, and it is very worth chasing. However, if you are defending and it is the start of the game, the enemy's deaths don't matter as much, so you can't afford risking your life as a defender at the start to chase for kills, because your life is way more valuable since you have such a long way to travel coming back to the point. Okay, next up, you should try to visualize projectile ranges. Now, this is obviously only applying to projectile characters, but it kind of goes hand in hand with what I said earlier about taking your time to aim. You should take your time to aim and also try to visualize the projectile ranges. For example, Mantis at this range is basically hit scan, kind of. However, at further ranges like this one, you will see that if I aim on him, I will miss. So you have to aim kind of at the end or a little bit ahead of the enemy's head, and it's kind of hard to visualize at first, but you will get used to it. And obviously you don't really have time to think about that while playing the game, but it will really become second nature after a while. You will start visualizing it. So try to understand the projectile ranges for the character that you play. And now, as a bonus tip, it's usually a meme when people start talking about mental in gaming guides, because the people who are going to get mad at video games are going to do that regardless of what a guide tells them. And if you are not going to do that, then you are just not going to do it regardless of what any guide told you. But just like Mantis would say, I recommend taking a break when you're tilted and maybe trying some new hero in normals, or playing another game, or touching grass, or whatever the kids say. Thanks for watching. I'll probably be streaming this game on my Twitch that hasn't been used in like a lifetime. You follow if you want, or if not, whatever. Yeah, see you.